situations that have actually been highlighted in here with the new vision is that government is still warning Ugandans against the Ebola epidemic. This is according to the Daily Monitor, so that is something that the Ugandans should be very cautious about in regards to that. Then also there is a huge report regarding smuggling, as there is concern over rising cattle smuggling from Tanzania. That is also another big report from the Daily Monitor, and you can still go through it to see where and how is this possible, as livestock farmers, especially from the 3 districts of Chotera, then the districts of Rakai and Isinjiro, always cross on either side of the border in search of water, pasture and cattle. And then apparently cattle smuggling is aided by porous crossings and other entry points on the Uganda and Tanzania border. So this is also one of another big report, if you to look at that, something that you should be very cautious to learn and to find out. Then also there is a lady who has been held over school fees fraud. That is another report from the Daily Monitor that you can choose to at least get off this particular morning to see how and what has happened to that particular woman who has frauded school fees, and which school is that, or which student's school fees has she frauded. Then crossing over to the new vision, President Museveni has urged investors to buy local raw materials. This was when President Museveni was launching the Modern Tiles company in Buyikwe district yesterday. The company employs over 4,600 Ugandans. So you can see how these investors coming through into the country and creating room for modernity. Now, Modern Group is set to set up a $100 million pharmaceutical vaccines plant in the country. This is another report coming in from the Modern Group, which is set to invest in steel and pharmaceuticals, as the president was launching the Modern company, the Modern Tiles company yesterday. Now also there is another report regarding over 350 employees acquire quality enhancement skills. This is according to the new vision. How about that particular one? You can still get to realize it more and more. Then there's also another report regarding President Museveni ordering probe into Wandegeya market wars. The crisis with the Wandegeya market. President has set an order. Which order has he set? That is with the new vision. You can still go in there and watch out for more from that particular report, as you can see more from there. And of course, as we're summing up with the new vision this morning, there is a situation regarding a report of the pupils who are on fire. That is another big one. That is socially a report that you would wish to get more from this particular morning. And of course, that brings us to the end of our press review this morning with the new vision and the Daily Monitor. Now let's get into the S&B National News. All right, now with the S&B International News, we start off with the inflation in the world, as the impact of rising inflation on workers has been felt across the globe. Now, speaking of which, in nearly every corner of the world, people are feeling the impact of inflation as the cost of living continues to increase and soar. Now, inflation isn't only impacting people equally though, and if you look at the situations for those with dependents, the higher prices are pinching families even higher and making it very difficult for people to maintain their livelihoods. Now, speaking of which, migrant workers and people who send money to relatives abroad are often saving less because they are forced to spend more due to inflation. Now, people are actually saving less even here in the country. You'll find out that very few Ugandans can save a huge amount of their money. Now, for some, the only option that has been left is hustling even harder, working weekends and nights and taking on second jobs to increase on their salary or to increase on their income intake. Now, for others, it means cutting back on meat and fresh fruits in order to send what's left of their savings to their families back home, especially those who are working abroad and left their jobs. For example, many Africans who leave their countries to seek for greener pastures. Then also, moving forward, a staggering 71 million people so far around the world experience poverty as a result of higher food and energy prices that have been climbing in the recent weeks across the globe. And also looking at the situation here, this is following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, making it even worse for most of the countries across the world. Now, on the availability of, this is regarding the availability of grains from the Black Sea region, and that was a report produced by the United Nations Development Program saying that why people are being, why the Ukraine invasion, the Russian invasion over Ukraine is affecting most of the people in the country, rather in the world. Now, also moving forward, the ripple effect of the war in Ukraine and the grain importing countries excavated already and led to dire economic conditions in the country, is still reeling from the economic shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects of climate change. Furthermore, when the price of food and fuel shoots up globally, this particular one means what people are able to send to relatives back home isn't going as far as it once did. Now, the International Monetary Fund estimates that the global inflation will peak at 9.5% if you look at that now this particular year. But then in developing countries, inflation is even much higher. Now, in Somalia, drought and conflicts have as well forced 1 million people to flee their homes. Now, the current drought is worse than any other country can remember, and the thousands of people have died, and many of them are children. Now, the United Nations says that half a million children are at risk of death due to malnutrition or famine, as analysis by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace says that the Philippines is the most food insecure country in emerging Asia due to its reliance on importation of food to feed its expanding population. In low-income countries, though, families are spending over 40,000 of their households' incomes on food despite government subsidies. Now, the rising cost of living in Egypt has made goals of savings for many to help others or family members even harder. Now, looking at inflation in Egypt has climbed to around 16% as the value of the local currency has dropped, and this has made life for millions of Egyptians living in poverty even more difficult. Okay, now away from that report regarding inflation in the world, now we look at what is coming in from inflation, particularly in Ghana, as the inflation in Ghana is actually becoming even more worse, as now Ghana's ruling party lawmakers demand the dismissal of their current finance minister. The Ghana's ruling party lawmakers on Tuesday called for the sacking of the country's finance minister, adding pressure on the government to deal with their record inflation. President Nana Akufo-Addo has come under fire as Ghanaians face 37% inflation and the collapse of their currency, the Ghanaian cedi, in an economic hardship worsened by the Russian-Ukraine invasion. Now, Finance Minister Kenny Ofori-Atta has just returned from Washington, where he was in talks with the International Monetary Fund, and they want to secure a loan of $3 billion. And in addition, Ofori-Atta, a majority of parliamentarians from Akufo-Addo's New Patriotic Party, have called for the dismissal of another financial official. Now, the president must immediately fire the two officials to restore hope to the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy, according to the parliamentary group spokesperson Ande Apia Kubi, who says this is something that they should be doing as a move to secure safety for Ghana's economy. Now, the call was supported by 80 of the 137 legislators in the NPP parliamentary caucus, as in Ghana's parliament, the NPP and the National Democratic Congress, the NDC, has the same number of seats. Lawmakers are scheduled to begin debating the 2023 budget in November. Now, on social media, the call by the majority caucus in parliament has been leading the trends, with minority MPs also calling for the same motion. President Nana Akufo-Addo has been criticized for his economic management of the country. This also includes his decision to enter into discussions with the International Monetary Fund, which he once promised would lead to an aid-free Ghana. Now, not only that, the decision has raised fears that the government will impose austerity measures that will further burden the population, which is already facing soaring prices. Last week, shopkeepers in the capital, Accra, shut down their stores to protest against the soaring cost of living. All right, now, lastly, from the international news, we look at the Chinese loans to Kenya, some report that we were running yesterday. Now, a report coming in from the Embassy of China in Nairobi says that Beijing will not hawk loans to Kenya. And China says its policies to loans to Kenya and the rest of the continent will depend on the borrowing requests from individual countries, underscoring The Asian nation is cautious approach to lending amid concerns about possible defaults. Now, Chinese ambassador to Kenya, Zhou Beijing, told a press conference that Beijing would not be hawking any loans but would wait to evaluate requests from African capitals before disbursing the various funds to African countries. Now, the envoy spoke a day after Chinese Communist Party, the CPC, ended its National Congress, endorsing President Xi Jinping for an unprecedented third term that has drawn comparison to the rule of modern China's founder, Mao Zedong. Now, the party Congress, which happens once every 5 years, did endorse the political ambitions of the country every 5 years. Now, Zhu, who is the Chinese ambassador to Kenya, said President Xi's ambition in the next 5 years is to ensure Beijing imports just as much as it exports to the 140 countries across the world. Now, Kenya has been negotiating with Beijing to increase exports of products such as frozen avocado to the Chinese market. Now, under President Xi, who has been in power since 2012, China has grown to become Africa's biggest bilateral lender and trading partner and the world's second largest economy. But there have been incessant questions whether Beijing will adjust its lending, especially after some countries became too indebted. Now, Beijing disbursed some $153 billion to Africa's public institutions between 2000 and 2019, according to official data, with most of the money going to infrastructure in countries that have signed up on the Belt and the Road Initiatives, BRI. Now, Kenya owes about 700 billion shillings to Chinese lenders, 700 billion Kenyan shillings to Chinese lenders. Chinese loans to the East African nation, however, dropped for the first time in 20 years in June, as Beijing adopts more cautious lending in Africa, where some nations have reached the limit of their borrowing capacity and the prospect of defaults continues to loom. Now, this comes at a time when the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have stepped up lending to Kenya, firming the institution's grip on the country's economy. That is it for the SMB International News this morning. Let's get some motivation while we start with our business tip of the day. The business tip says diversify. If you get more than 50% of your business from one customer or distribution channel, then please be diversified. Don't become overly dependent on one source for your long-term economic well-being. If you get more than 50% of your business from one customer or distribution channel, please diversify. Well, when you look at the situation here, that you're not supposed to be overly dependent on one source of income in most of the cases. This not only happens to the business owners but also to employees. Sometimes you get to realize if you have only one source of income, then what will happen if you lose it? These are times when you get to realize that if you're a business person and you only got one market base, or you're only having one target market and only targeting one particular client who you believe is the only one who is supposed to buy from you, then what then will happen if this particular client is no more, or they have shifted or relocated or found someone who's selling the same thing but quite better than what you've been providing? So this is something when you have to diversify, to try to look at other means of creating room to ensure that not only do you get in contact with those particular people who have the ability to expand your business, but also to encourage yourself that you can tap into various markets, not only the one that you're used to. So diversification is quite important to you as a business person and for you as an individual, and also to increase on your sales and also not limit your source of income to only one perspective. Okay, away from the business tip, let's get our business quote of this morning. Now, the business quote is saying the secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. All right. The secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. So your daily routine, what do you do on a daily? How do you do it? How best do you execute your duties? How do you plan for your working day? How do you get up in the morning? What are those key things that you start with every other working day? Those are some of the things that you should have at the back of your mind at the end of it all. These are things that you should create for yourself as an individual. Sometimes it's not easy, by the way, to adopt to a new routine, but once you set your routine right, then your future is greatly hidden under that. What do you do on a daily? That is why you get to realize that people have been organized right from school, and they're pushing it even through their career, and this has helped them shape up their future greatly, and it's not affecting them in any way because they are used to it, and their future was already created by the routine they grew up with. They had created a pace, and under which pace they are still using. They only accelerate, add some speed, and see that they are evolving every other day that passes by. So clearly that is this particular quote telling us to always mind about our daily routine, because that particular one has got our future within it. So our future is greatly hidden in our daily routines. That is according to the quote that we have today. All right, this is Smart Means Business, and that is it for the first hour of your daily Kickstarter. After the break, we get back with our coffee court discussions, and also we have more still in the second hour, which also includes the topic of discussion. Stick around here as I'll be right back.
Smart 24, driving business.
Cut. Zizinga, wait.
Yeah?
Ka selfie.
Wow. Do you have the MyGo TV app? Oh, do you use star 206 hash? Hey, labono. Bwe life techina kunyumira. With the MyGo TV app or star 206 hash, you can make payments, you can change package, you can fix errors, you can check your balance anytime, anywhere.
Download the MyGo TV app from Google Play Store or the App Store, or dial star 206 hash.
Ha! My phone!
Go TV Uganda. Love it.
Say